When you focus on the negatives, you're only going to feel those negatives. It's kind of like you are what you eat. So if you're focusing on pain or on sorrow or on resentment or on anger, that's what you're going to be filled with.
Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Welcome to the show, friend. I am thrilled to have my new best friend, Deborah, with us. Deborah is going to help us learn to live our happiest and healthiest life. And I know that sounds cheeky, kind of, everybody says this, but it's like, where can we find that time or that priority or that thing? Do you ever just wake up in the morning and just need 5 more minutes of peace before you hit the floor running? And so Deborah's going to kind of help us guide through those times when we feel we're at our wits' end and we just need a little bit of me time. So, Deborah, the information about you is in the show notes. Help my friend and I figure out how to put ourselves back on the priority list.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is there is supposedly an old saying that comes from yogic philosophy, or I don't know who originally said it, but it's those who have the least amount of time are the ones that need to meditate the most. Or there was a question as, how long should I meditate for? And the answer is, if you feel you're kind of like at your wit's end and you don't have time for anything, then that's when you need to meditate the most. And let's just say, I'll talk about myself because I used to work 80-hour work weeks. I used to travel all over the world for work, and I was constantly frazzled. And then I just want to talk about during COVID, actually right before COVID, I said to myself, I'm working 7 days a week. I need to cut back. So I resigned a client of mine who I had been with forever that was a nonprofit. I loved them to death. And then the next day or the next week, I had no work. And I had time for maybe 3 hours of meditation a day. But of course, that's not when I most needed it.
Yeah. I heard it said, if someone says, hey, I got to do this for 5 minutes, I don't have time. And he says, okay, then do it for an hour. It's like, yes, you need it. So yeah, you're flying all over the place and you're just out. And all of a sudden, we could have been meditating all this time for that hour to give you that peace. And now you have 3 hours. That's awesome.
And I gotta say, hey, I loved spending 3 hours a day doing all different kinds of meditation. And one thing that I want to mention is there are so many different ways that you can meditate or be mindful. And that's why, I wrote a book and one of the chapters is all about the different ways you can meditate. And I like to walk in nature. So for example, during COVID, I felt blessed that I lived in a rural area. I could walk, be surrounded by trees and birds and pay attention to the birds or walk my dog. Just simple things that too often we don't look at those simple things and appreciate them. Or too often maybe we say, oh, darn, I've got to walk the dog again. But if you just take, a 5-minute walk with the dog and listen to the birds sing, look at the flowers, and just breathe deeply, that's a beautiful way to meditate. And the other thing that I felt with my life is, fortunately, from the time I was a young kid, I'm talking, like preteen, I had 2 different chronic issues. One was digestive disorder. And of course, I went to, gastroenterologist when I was a kid. And the other one was chronic back pain. And I went to a specialist and I had my diagnoses for both. So throughout my life, I have recognized it is so important to take some time out wherever you may be and just sip an herbal tea, which was very important for me for my digestive disorders, and breathe deeply, which was also extremely important for me for my digestive disorders. This, that so many of the physical problems that we all have are stress related. And, I lived surrounded by stress. What I didn't mention is I was actually at one point, I was a crisis management specialist. And I will never forget my daughter, asked me once. I got a call like at around midnight. Back then, we had landlines. And my daughter's response, she was a little kid. She said something like, "Did they kill somebody?" Because unfortunately, that's what I dealt with oftentimes. Those emergency calls were shootings or suicides or, things that were very serious and very stress inducing.
And so, with all this stress, did you meditate at that young age, or were you just taking time out? Or, when I think meditate, even as much as I know it's not the only way, I still imagine the cross-legged person with their little hands on their lap, and that's the image for some reason we have. But writing, doodling, dancing, nature, there are so many ways to meditate. And really, that means getting out of the hustle and bustle and being one with who you are. And in my sense, that's how I interpret it. Um, is how do I get the rest of the stuff off? And if you're a doodler, you can do that at your desk in a meeting and get to that. I'm pulling myself out of this craziness. But as a young child, did you meditate, or did you just find ways to ground yourself into letting go of those issues that were going on?
That's a great question. I did not know the word meditate or meditation. I didn't know the word breath work, or in yoga, we call it pranayama. They were things that I found for myself. I don't want to say instinctively because it wasn't instinctive, but I guess through some kind of trial and error, I found them. And I will never forget. I lived in Mexico City for a time, and I shouldn't say this on the air, but I will because it's just between friends. And I was working illegally. And I was afraid, that caused a little bit of stress because I was working illegally. And so my stomach flare-ups were very bad. And I remember once, again, something that I shouldn't have done, but I'll share it just because we're friends. I went to a really nice hotel. I kind of just went in as if I was a guest. And of course, I was living in a very humble place. And I went into this nice hotel and I just sat down by poolside in the sun. And I just closed my eyes and I just tried to relax and soak up the sun. And that was a way for me to settle my digestive disorders. But the point that I want to make is that it can be done. And this is what in my book, I talk about everything in 10 minutes a day or less, because most of us don't have those 3 hours to do whatever. We don't have the luxury to be able to crash a hotel swimming pool. I had audacity, I guess. And also I had a lot of pain. But we have to be able to find a way to kind of go inward. And we were talking about doodling. One thing that I find very meditative are weeding. So, hey, that is at one place where I lived. Oh my God, it was a never ending chore, but it helped me. It was grounding for me, and it was my form of meditation. And I've heard people talk about, when you're washing the dishes,
Mhm.
make washing the dishes into a meditation. Another thing that I'm trained in, it's called laughter yoga. And the concept of laughter yoga is you don't have to be a comedian and you don't have to listen to a comedian, but just fake it and start laughing. Of course, I recommend you do this when you're by yourself or with your loved ones, but not in the middle of a bus when people are going to look at you and think, what's wrong with you? But just start laughing. And it really helps in terms of the endorphins. So, all those feel good hormones. And even from a physical perspective, it helps the circulation going, it helps the heart rate, it even tones the abdominal muscles. It does all these incredible things. And it doesn't take any time just to laugh. And what I would even do to take it a step further, if you're feeling really stressed out and you feel like at your wit's end and you want to cry, laugh. And it will make a huge difference.
Yeah, and it's even that fake, that same thing that you may not feel like laughing, but you can go through the motions and make the sounds, and just the clearing of your lungs, getting that old stale air out, laughing is so good for that. So what a great way to let go of some stress. And that's one that you probably don't want to do in the boardroom, but you can do it anywhere else, like in your car. Is like, go for it. And I liked what you said about um, people might think you're crazy, but I don't care if someone thinks you're crazy. And if you need to do it in the middle of the grocery store, guess what you're going to do? You're going to make everybody else laugh too. And so just do it wherever you feel comfortable. And so I love that laughter. And I've never been to a laughter yoga class. I've heard about them. Um, there may be some by me. I don't know. It would be interesting to experience. But it is another form of meditation, just pure laughter, just because you can't think about all the other crazy, sad things when you're doing that.
And I wanted to mention, you talked about, you didn't care if they thought, hey, you're crazy. Well, I've got to say that I've been that way with my physical exercises. So I mentioned that, I was diagnosed when I was a kid with a back issue, which it's musculoskeletal. I was born that way. And so for the rest of my life, I have to do things to protect my back, to strengthen my core so that my back doesn't hurt as much. But I can't stand for a long time without doing certain exercises to relieve the pain. And I have been places I will never forget. I was in a museum in Italy. I don't remember if it was Rome. I don't remember where I was, but it was a museum, and I was doing my exercises, my yogic exercises and my poses to stretch out my back. And one of the guards came up to me and he basically said that I couldn't do that. And I was like, it's not like I'm harming the artwork. But I do another place that I used to always do my physical exercises just because it felt right was in a library. Because of all the stacks, you can just kind of look as if you're stretching to reach for a book or stoop down to reach for a book. And you can do all these things to kind of like limber up your back or your shoulders or your neck or whatever you need to. And it works.
It does. And that's funny that the card would say that, but it could, people get annoyed. People don't want to be distracted. The other day, my husband and I were out and we were sitting on a bench, and the people on the other side of the bench had wiggly leg syndrome. And it's like, I had to move. And it's like, go ahead and wiggle. I don't have a problem with that. But for some reason, it was triggering me. I was there to calm. It wasn't allowing that. So sometimes our actions trigger other people, but that doesn't mean to not do them.
Well, one of the things that I was taught through all my yogic training is that one of the things that we need to do is shut out what is around us. And I did this one form of meditation every day for about a year and a half when I was in a kind of like a slump in my personal life. And, I felt I needed something to help me. And it's actually called Sahaja, Sahaja yoga, but it's a form of meditation, and it's usually free. You can find it a lot of different places as well as online. But at one of the places where I was doing it free, the people that were running it and leading it, they brought their baby with all the time. And sometimes the baby would really be screaming. And they said, this is part of the practice. You need to just tune it out. And then I've done a lot of teaching of yoga and workshops around the world. And I was in Nicaragua 2 years in a row. And the first year that I went, they were in construction. It wasn't supposed to be in construction, but they were late. So where I was supposed to be living and working was a construction zone. And I would teach yoga at 7:00 in the morning. And I thought, oh, this will be fine because the construction workers probably don't come until later. No, they were doing all the construction all around us. And it honestly did not bother me at all. But it did sometimes bother the participants. And I would just have to tell them, this is a really great exercise for you to just focus on yourself. Who cares about anything else? Just listen to your body.
A lot of times I've said I want to be that Yeti cup that keeps me consistent for a long, long time. And instead of like the paper cup that immediately every temperature change on the outside changes the inside, and you're just going back and forth. And it's, how do I put that protection around me so that I can live my best life without responding to all that external influence? And so as we're doing this, I want to take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, but how does all this meditation and stuff help us live our healthiest and happiest life? So we'll be right back. Hey, since I rarely have openings in my coaching schedule, I have a new resource out there on my website. It is called the BFF Coaching Network. And I have offered a spot there for any coach that has been on this show to list their coaching. You can go out there, you can listen to their episodes, you can feel a little bit about them, and then choose a coach that will work for you. So LauraJaneLayton.com, the BFF Coaching Network. All right, Deborah, healthiest, and happiest life, the HA life, right? Or HH life. How do we use meditation, because that's what we've been talking about, to be our healthiest? To be our happiest?
Well, there are so many different research studies because, first of all, I want to say I'm the kind of person with the background that I have and all the work that I had. It's all about research and statistics. So I've read all the research and statistics. And meditation, mindfulness, which is, again, a buzzword, but meditation, mindfulness really can help you rewire your brain. And one of my teachers is a neuroscientist who is affiliated with Harvard Medical School, and he has been studying yoga and the brain for about 30 years. And it's really incredible, some of the things that he talks about with his research. However, that when he says yoga, he is referring to four things. There is the physical practice, there is the breath work, there is the meditation, and there's the relaxation. So that's four things. But another one of the people who I have read, and my daughter, who's a psychotherapist, actually recommended this book to me. His name is Rick. Can't think of his last name, but it's his book is called Hardwiring Happiness, and he talks about how Rick Hansen. He talks about how through meditation and through you can really change your brain and carry it on. It's in your genes. You can change it. It's just fascinating. And I have to say again, I'm not a medical professional and I don't know all that much about the brain. It's like I've read so much about it and it boggles me. I have a hard time understanding it, which is why I'm so interested in these experts that focus all on the brain. And we don't give two things we don't give ourselves enough credit for, not only the brain's capacity to mold itself, but the other thing is our heart. I think most of us in Western society focus on, okay, I'm on the analytical side, as opposed to what feels right. So as a perfect example, this weekend, I taught a yoga class and I was talking about the importance of when women do any physical practice, including yoga, depending on the time of the month, if they're on a monthly cycle, or depending on their life stage, they need to modify their physical practice. And after class, a woman came up to me and she had been looking kind of like as if she was hating the class the whole time. And she'd been in my classes before, and I always thought she didn't like me or something. Well, she came up afterwards and told me about a medical condition she had that had to do with female reproduction. And she said she felt so much better after the class. And she said there were a number of things that she, on her own, just felt she shouldn't be doing, and she didn't. And I was so happy she came up to talk to me because I was feeling as if she didn't like me, right? And it was so good to hear that, not too good to hear that she had a physical issue. But what I told her is, I'm so happy that you were able to listen to not only your body, but just to your inner instinct. And too often we don't listen to what our gut, we talk about the gut, what our gut tells us to do.
Or intuition.
Exactly.
We all have it. We don't all listen. And when you can hear that and go, my body is telling me to not do what the instructor is doing. I'm going to modify it. We may feel like we're being judged by other class people, but listening to our body is very critical. And you've talked a lot about your back pain, and I don't stand long periods of time. It just hurts. And like walking through the grocery store, I lean funny on the grocery cart to help stretch it out so it's not tightening up. And it's listen. Your body knows what to do, and allow yourself to honor it and say, I love the message. And how else could we live our healthiest and happiest life if we're not listening and reacting to those quiet clues that our bodies, our brains, our environment show us? Have you ever just probably like this lady just, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And you go, wow, that's amazing. But how many instructors give you the permission to modify? If this doesn't feel good, do it where it feels good to you. And that's such an honor that you're able to articulate that to your clients and allow them to listen to their bodies.
The other thing that I wanted to mention is in terms about listening to yourself is I think that when we go through school, we go through, this kind of, I don't want to say brainwashing, but we go through a a period in which we're trying to fit in.
Mhm.
Everyone wants to fit in, and we want to do what the teacher says because we know that we're going to be scolded or ridiculed if we don't do what the teacher says and if we don't do what everybody else does. We're all trying to fit in. But what I wanted to mention is that to me, children, and the younger, the more, they just do what comes natural to them. And if you look at a young child or a toddler, what do? They laugh all the time. They, they move and they dance in their own way. They like to sing. And those are things that we as adults need to give ourselves the approval to do it. Ages ago, this was maybe 35 years ago, I did a promotion when I was living in Miami, and we took an old-fashioned bathtub and we put it on the beach in a really popular area of the beach, and it was a sing in the bathtub singing contest. But but the point is, you talk about singing in the bathtub. Well, everyone has time to sing when they're in the shower. Everyone has time to sing when they're in the car or on the bus or whatever, and
When
maybe,
nobody else is listening.
yeah, or quietly. Exactly. When you're washing the dishes. And the same thing about dancing. So I try to, again, because of my back and I need to move it a lot, I try to, again, maybe I was the kind of kid in school where I was like the wiggly kid.
Squirmy.
Yeah, but it's good for you. And so, even if you're, again, if you're in the bathroom, nobody's watching, just do whatever feels right for your body and for your mind. Another thing that I love, and I haven't done this, but I loved this remember the movie Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta? Well, there's one part of the movie where they go to, I don't know if it was the Brooklyn Bridge, and they just scream at the loudest of their capacity under the bridge just to kind of let go and release. And I saw that when I was young, before I got into all this holistic, coaching. But I thought that's the greatest. And probably because I was the kind of kid that, would have, you know, always kept my mouth shut.
My sister says she screams in the car, and it's like, okay, I don't feel that urge, but I used to love to listen to the echo in the mountains. You walk up the mountain and you yell a little bit and it comes back, and it's possible someone else is hearing you, but it's so fun to do. And it's a little bit like, in the bridge. I didn't happen to have a bridge to go to, so we chose the mountains around here. But yeah, it is exhilarating to let that out. And I couldn't tell you the last time I screamed. Okay, I need to do this again. No, but not in my backyard.
The other thing you were talking about, the sound of the echoes, and what I don't think enough of us do is listen to the sound of our breath. So we were talking before about meditation. There's so many different ways to meditate. To me, the easiest way of, if I'm going to be still, is to listen to my breath, and I count my breath. And, we need to listen to our bodies and our breath and our minds and our guts, or the intuition. We just need to be so much more aware. And I also wanted to mention that one of my early teachers, I consider that guru to be kind of like one of my foundations in the yogic and the healing world. I remember this was, again, about 30 years ago, and she said, I was a female guru, which I think is kind of cool. And she said that one of the benefits or one of the reasons why you should meditate is because it leads to greater intuition. And I love that because my mother was a highly intuitive, very sensitive woman. She was like hypersensitive. And I was always like, really, the more the focused on the brain, and I didn't feel anything. I didn't sense anything. But I always wanted to be like my mom. And then I learned we all have the capabilities. We just need to welcome it and allow it and fine tune it.
And listen to it. I find that when I get those promptings, that I fear if I don't listen to them, I'm not going to get them again. And so follow through. It's like one time I wasn't feeling well and I left the office and kind of like, should I go to the ER? And I felt I should go to the ER. Like, damn it, I'm never asking that question again because I don't want to go. You know? And I got there, and the funny thing is the symptoms and stuff I was having wasn't a problem, but they found something else. And so I was supposed to go, but not for the reason I thought. And it's that trust. It's that follow through. Don't ask if you don't want to do it because they may not answer you next time.
Yeah, that's a great example of the importance of listening to that inner wisdom.
And we all have it. It's just allowing us to trust it. And, we always want to test it. Was that worth it? Was that worth it? Sometimes it's years down the road before you know that that was the right move. It's faith in religion. It's, it's following through and trusting that the universe or source or God or whatever you call it is there for you and is going to point you in the directions. And that source universe could be your inner self. And they know it knows what's best. And it's like following through. And I think as we talk, it's like, duh, when I can trust that, I'm happy, I'm content. And of course, it's going to put us in the safe areas where we can be healthy and safe. So it's like, how do we just move? It'd be great if I could just be perfect tomorrow, but I will just keep working on it.
Well, the other thing too, I want to talk about in terms of like just being your happiest is that so much is all about, the mindset, in terms of having the positive mindset. And when you focus on the negatives, you're only going to feel those negatives. It's kind of like you are what you eat. So if you're focusing on pain or on sorrow or on resentment or on anger, that's what you're going to be filled with. And, none of us has a perfect life. All of us have had some kind of trauma, big or small. We all need to just be so thankful for every day. And for what I always tell people, I'm really big about, gratitude journals and having a daily gratitude practice. And what I tell people all the time is, you don't have to say, oh, I'm grateful that I won the lottery. No, sometimes I say, in fact, I think it was my last newsletter, I put, I'm grateful that I have running water. Because a lot of people don't have running water. And or I'm grateful. A lot of times I say, I'm grateful for my bathtub. That is self-care. I love my bathtub. Or
I meditate in my bathtub because it's so grounding and so peaceful.
I do too. Yeah. And I also do reflexology because I do reflexology. So I do all sorts of things in the bathtub, but it's wonderful me time. And of course, with aromatherapy. But the other thing too that I try to do with my gratitude practice is I try to focus on people that I'm grateful for. And it can be, I'm just going to mention, make things up. It can be the bus driver because he had a nice smile on his face. Or it can be, it doesn't have to be somebody that made a huge difference in your life, but just recognize the beauty in the small things around you.
Here's one of mine that I am so thankful for. And when you talk about bus driver, is the Instacart delivery dudes. And that may sound funny, but Instacart has given people that don't have the communication skills to work in corporate America or have that full-time job, or it allows those people that can only work certain hours and they can be as flexible as they want. This company has given those people a way to feel like they're providing for themselves. And when I get that Instacart driver that can't speak English, I am thankful that there's an opportunity out there for them. And I know that's just a minor one. And then I was thinking about that baby crying that you talked about. And when you can go and empathize with the baby that's uncomfortable, that's feeling something that's not making them content, then all of a sudden I can feel that empathy and gratitude of what they're going through instead of the disruption that they're putting on me. And no, I'm not perfect. I still get bitchy and pissy when there's things going on. But if I take that time to reground it to what that other thing is going through, it's no longer about me. And when we can do that, I think we allow life to keep going in its circles, because my life is here for me, not you, not the other person. It's here for me. And the other people that I interact with, they're here for them. Of course, their interactions are going to help me. But even if they're a negative one, where I feel it's me that's negative, not the incoming information, but how I take it, even those I can reground to give it a purpose and a reason that's benefiting my life. And when we can do that, it may not be the happy-go-lucky bouncing around the house like the toddler, but it's freeing, it's peaceful, and you are content. And to me, those words mean happy.
And I think we just need to, again, focus more on the positive. And one thing, I do write down. I do have a written gratitude journal. And I remember when I was a kid, again, I tried to be a good student. And I remember the teacher said that when you take notes, even if you don't read the notes again, it helps. And when you take the notes, your brain remembers them more. So that's another reason why I think it's so important to write down what you're grateful for. I like to do it right before I go to bed, because then, hey, hopefully I'll have sweet dreams. But I just think it's really important. And also having positive affirmations. And I did a long time ago when I was contemplating leaving the corporate world. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I found a book that had some exercises in it. And so I followed the exercises and I, filled out 3x5 cards with everything that I was supposed to do. And these were all, of course, what I wanted to do in the future, what I was, my dream.
My dream boardy kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, I put them in a drawer, didn't look at them for 5 years. 5 years, I took them out. And they had all happened. And I hadn't even thought of them again. But subconsciously, it helped.
I do like writing the things down. If the more senses that you can involve in a affirmation, or a gratitude. Because to me, when you're thankful for things, there's more thankful things that come your way that you can be thankful for. But when you resent them, you kind of block stuff from coming in. And so it's allowing and enjoying all those things that teach us. If we want to learn patience, something's got to happen that is going to push you to the limit where you have to learn it. You don't just learn it from not going through it. And so those things in our life are there to help us learn those. I want to call them lessons, but that sounds like so mechanical. But to be the best you can be.
And I feel exactly the same. And I do say the word lesson, but the way that I look at it is, any challenge or obstacle or roadblock, we just need to turn it into a learning and learn from it. And it only makes us wiser and stronger.
And who doesn't want to be wiser and stronger? And if you don't, that's okay. You don't have to learn from it. But I want the easiest path to go through. And if I learn to love this stuff in the way, it seems to go away.
Absolutely.
Deborah, I have totally enjoyed chatting with you. This has been really fun. And I'm sure our friend has fallen in love with you too. But what is that one action item or that one thing we can try this week that will help us go down our path just with a little bit more skip in our hop?
Well, what I really like to say with my clients is I might give them 10 pages of what they do, but I need to find what is it that sparks joy in their life, what makes their heart sing. And I lead workshops. I think I mentioned First Love Yourself workshop, and one of the exercises I do is I do a short guided meditation, and I ask them to focus or to have come out of that, what makes your heart sing? And for me, it's singing. So I can sing in the shower or I can sing in the car. But for someone else, maybe it's drawing, or maybe it's hugging your partner, or maybe it's taking more time in your bath. Everyone is different. And we have to recognize everyone is different, and you need to determine what is it that makes your heart sing and do it.
So this week, pay attention to when your heart feels singy or happy, and then figure out how to recreate it in the going forward. How do I keep this happy place? I like that. Why don't you tell our friend about yourself and where to get a hold of you in case they want to join you in your workshops?
Well, again, I worked the corporate life, 80-hour work weeks and very heavy stress for far too long. And now I work as a holistic coach, and I'm the author of a multi-award-winning book. And what I really want to do with my life as I'm older is I want to encourage people to find what makes their heart sing earlier on in life and remove those obstacles and be true to themselves. And I think most of us are afraid. I know I was afraid to make a career move. I was like, I can never leave this paycheck. But I think we have to be true to ourselves. And I want to encourage people to do what's best for them and to live the healthiest and happiest lives they can.
I love it. That's beautiful. So thank you so much for coming. I know I've said it, but the information about Deborah and how to get a hold of her is in the show notes. So just check it out. Deborah and I are not medical or mental licensed professionals. We are here for entertainment. Do go to your doctors and your mental professionals for those type of problems. So thank you so much for joining, and stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, Let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss the next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.